Now let's talk about Tuesday night, because the timeline here is genuinely insane. Trump set an 8 p.m. Eastern deadline: reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face the most destructive bombing campaign since World War II. The announcement came less than 12 hours after Trump threatened to wipe out Iran's entire civilization. More specifically, he threatened bridges, power plants, and potentially oil and water infrastructure. Let that sink in. The President of the United States threatened to wipe out an entire civilization, in writing, on Truth Social. Meanwhile, diplomats were scrambling. Pakistan, not the US, not the UN, but Pakistan, stepped in as the primary mediator. Negotiations between the US and Iran picked up momentum over the past 24 hours as Pakistan served as the primary mediator. And then, with the clock ticking, something remarkable happened. The US and Iran reached a ceasefire deal on Tuesday, less than 2 hours before the deadline President Trump imposed, for Iran to meet his demands or else face wide-scale destruction. President Trump said he has agreed to a double-sided ceasefire with Iran, less than 2 hours before his deadline, for Iran to either cut a deal with the US or face massive strikes on its power plants. "I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks, the president wrote on Truth Social, arguing that the US has already met and exceeded all military objectives. And here's the other side of the table. Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi confirmed that Iran had agreed to halt defensive operations, likely referring to its drone and missile strikes. Markets reacted instantly. Oil futures plummeted on the news of a ceasefire, with the US benchmark West Texas Intermediate falling more than 13% to below $92 a barrel in the hour after Trump's announcement, and S&P 500 futures rose more than 1%. The world exhaled, but only for a moment. Okay, so we have a ceasefire. But what does it actually say? Because the devil, as always, is in the details. Trump's conditions were simple on the surface. The move was subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, for its part, confirmed the deal, but added its own fine print. Iran and Oman planned to charge transit fees for vessels passing through the strait during the ceasefire, with the funds earmarked for reconstruction. So, technically open, but with tolls. And Trump? He floated something even wilder. Trump suggested the United States may be involved in securing the Strait of Hormuz in a joint venture with Iran. We're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of other people. A joint venture with Iran. Let that marinate. Now, Iran also submitted a 10-point peace proposal. Trump wrote, "We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate." He added that almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to. But what does Iran's proposal actually demand? It includes controlled passage through the Strait of Hormuz, coordinated with Iran's armed forces. The necessity of ending the war against all components of the resistance axis, and withdrawal of US combat forces from all bases and positions in the region. Withdrawal of US forces from the entire region. That is a massive ask. And yet Trump is calling it a workable basis. Make that make sense. Here's where I need to slow down, because this is the part of the story that should concern everyone. Within hours of the ceasefire announcement, things started cracking. In the hours following the ceasefire announcement, sirens sounded across the Gulf and in Israel as several countries reported incoming missiles. An Israeli military spokesperson also told CNN that Israel was still carrying out strikes in Iran in the early hours of this morning. Israel still striking, hours after the ceasefire. A US defense official said it might take time for the ceasefire order to filter down to the lower ranks of the Revolutionary Guards. And then there's the Lebanon problem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said in a statement Wednesday morning that it supports Trump's decision to suspend strikes against Iran for 2 weeks, but that the ceasefire doesn't include Lebanon, despite Pakistan's Prime Minister saying otherwise. So Pakistan says Lebanon is included, Israel says it's not, and nobody seems to agree on the scope of this deal, experts say Tuesday's two-week postponement raises critical questions, including whether Israel would abide by the ceasefire Trump agreed to. One analyst from the Quincy Institute noted that while the US can rein in Israel, we haven't seen Trump being able to sustain that pressure on the Israelis, Trita Parsi said. And VP Vance, who helped negotiate the final hours of the deal, was notably cautious. Vance called the agreement a fragile truce and said the response from Iran had varied depending on the group within the government. The foreign minister responded favorably, but others had been lying about what the US had accomplished militarily. A fragile truce. Those are the words of the man who helped broker it. Both sides are doing victory laps right now, and they can't both be right, or can they? Trump's team is framing this as a complete and total American military triumph. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claimed the US reached a decisive military victory in Iran. Iran, on the other hand, is telling a very different story. Iranian leaders are also touting the ceasefire as a victory, noting that the US has agreed to the general framework of Iran's 10-point proposal. Good news to the dear nation of Iran. Nearly all the objectives of the war have been achieved. Both sides won, neither side lost. Or, and this is the more honest read, both sides needed a way out, and Pakistan gave them one. What about nuclear weapons? That was supposedly the whole reason for this war. Hegseth declared, "What the new Iranian regime knows is they'll never have a nuclear weapon or the capability to get a path to one. But it's unclear where negotiations stand regarding Iran's position on uranium enrichment." Trump said the US will work with Iran to dig up and remove buried uranium in the country. Dig it up. Together, with Iran, we are in genuinely uncharted territory. So where does this go from here? Here's the roadmap as it stands right now. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif invited both delegations to Islamabad on Friday, April 10, 2026, to further negotiate a conclusive agreement. "We earnestly hope that the Islamabad talks succeed in achieving sustainable peace," Sharif said. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Vice President JD Vance are expected to attend. Iran's delegation leader, however, had yet to be picked as of Wednesday morning. You have 2 weeks. The clock is ticking. Iran's Supreme National Security Council hinted that the ceasefire could be extended beyond its initial 2 weeks if negotiations proceed favorably. But shipping hasn't normalized yet. Shipping data showed little movement in the Strait of Hormuz more than 6 hours after the ceasefire was announced, with one analyst warning vessels and insurers would need to see further positive signs before resuming traffic. The oil markets are still rattled, the Middle East is still on edge, and the two sides don't even agree on what they agreed to. Here's the bottom line. What happened last night was extraordinary. A war that appeared to be escalating into something catastrophic was pulled back from the edge by Pakistan, of all mediators, just 90 minutes before the clock hit zero. But a ceasefire is not peace. 2 weeks of pause is not a resolution. And a fragile truce, in the words of the VP, between two sides that both claim victory and neither fully trusts the other, is not stability. Watch Islamabad on Friday. Watch whether Israel respects the terms. Watch whether ships actually start moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Those 3 things will tell you everything you need to know about whether this is the beginning of the end or just a brief intermission. If this video helped you understand what's actually happening, drop a comment below. Share it with someone who needs the context, and hit subscribe because this story is moving fast and we're going to keep you ahead of it. I'll see you in the next one.